Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And today's episode is really interesting in that this is a leader of a business that has basically transformed itself. It's basically metamorphosized. And as you can imagine, the talent strategy that comes from that is completely different. And so my guest, Russ Jones, heads up a fascinating business in Silicon Valley, and he's going to take us through the story of why and how he went about making that transformation for the business. So with all that said, welcome Russ Jones to the show.
Hey, Jeff. Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here today. So Cargo Chief has an interesting start. I'm a serial entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. I've been here for 20 years. And my first company was a company called Clearbox Communications that pioneered the market for headsets for mobile phones. We started to dominate that product class, maybe 45, 50% market share. And we were up to $1 million unit run rate. And we had terrible trucking experiences. Just arranging transportation via truck was a nightmare. I had just many war stories of how.
And by trucking, you mean distribution of the product, just literally shipping the product.
Just shipping the product. I had in my warehouse.
Yep.
Some months our inventory turns were as high as 12, which is unbelievable. I mean,
Yep.
CFOs love that, of course. And we had just tremendous problems. So I started up Cargo Chief as a freight broker's focus on small shippers to help a small shipper solve its problems. And what we discovered is that there are a lot of small shippers with trucking issues. The company mushroomed in growth. It went from 3 to 60 employees in 2.5 years. We had closed 600 accounts.
Wow.
And then we learned that the big shippers have same care-abouts as the little shippers. So we started closing these big Fortune 500, even Fortune 50 accounts. And the company was growing very quickly. And then all of a sudden, other freight brokers said, "Hey, Cargo Chief, your multi-patented award-winning technology is better than anything else I can find. Will you please license it?" And when we heard that for the 6th time, we said, I'm currently today competing with 15,000 other freight brokers.
In a relatively low-margin business, I would guess, right?
Super low margin, not uncommon to be sub 10 points. The industry average is like 12. A good year is 15% gross margin.
And just to be clear, are you talking gross margins?
These are gross margins.
Gross margins, 10 to 15%.
Yes, and you'll have aggressive competitors who'll come in at 5.
Wow.
And so your EBITDA, so a typical broker's EBITDA might be 2 to 4% if things are going right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a chance to leave that. We had a huge sales team. Chicago's known as a huge talent pool for the world of freight brokerage.
Yep.
So we had a big office in the West Loop. It was this beautiful brick office on Aberdeen Street. And we had like 40 employees there. And that all sounds good on the brochure. But the reality is that they all like to party like rock stars. Before you know it, you have serious HR issues where people are getting in bar fights in hotels.
Yeah.
Just
a rough and rowdy crowd, huh?
It is serious. I had a full tour for HR. And then so we basically transitioned the business. We sold the brokerage. And today we have a little less than 20 employees, mostly our engineers and data scientists, and a few business people. And now we sell technology to the volume buyers of trucking capacity to help them find truckload capacity more effectively and more efficiently.
And just for comparison, you went from 10, 15% gross margin to like SaaS gross margins, or what kind of?
Yeah, this is SaaS. We're selling data and information,
Wow.
90% gross margins. So it's a very different business to manage. The top line's not quite the same, so that's a little bit, you have to take a pill when you look at your income statement.
Yep.
But we're also building a great network, because what's happening is every time we engage with a client, we ask them, well, would you like to see your trucking carriers on the network so you can see which of your trusted, vetted carriers is available for your next load? Of course they want to see that. So every time we close a client, they give us their carriers and the MC number and the DOT number and all the details of the carrier. we recruit those carriers onto our platform. And our platform, which is called C4, which stands for Cargo Chief Carrier Capacity,
Yep.
enables any size trucking carrier to seamlessly share its capacity with our platform. We aggregate that together and then present that back to our client. So our client can type in Oakland to Dallas and see which of their hundreds of carriers or thousands of carriers is available right now for that load, Oakland to
So
Dallas.
just like when I go to hotels.com and I can search for hotel availability of a room, your clients can search for cargo availability on a truck.
That's right. That's right. And you can even think of it. I think that's a very good analogy. Actually, I like that analogy. And we also have a booking bot, which we call a booking assistant. So when our client's running busy, they simply type in Oakland to Dallas, and our booking bot takes that information and other load details, and we go out and we solicit offers from various trucking carriers, bring those offers back to the client, enable the client to very efficiently just play various carriers off against each other and negotiate. So instead of someone making 30 or 50 phone calls, they might spend a few minutes on Booking Assistant and complete the same task.
Got it. So now let's morph into the people part of all this. So you've basically transformed the company. You went from a rough and ready sales focused culture, I'm guessing, to a pretty intellectual software and development based culture, right? Totally different. And you've changed really the center of gravity from Chicago to Silicon Valley. How long did all that take, and what were some of the key steps in making that kind of metamorphosis without the business imploding?
Right. So the key was we had built up a brand of Cargo Chief. If one were to Google Cargo Chief, they would see hundreds of entries. We'd received a number of industry awards. So there was a good brand value around Cargo Chief. And we were known as one of the innovators in what's in a huge, industry, a $700 billion industry just domestically. I mean, it's enormous.
Yep.
So what we did was we notified all the vendors and our customers as to what was happening and why. We made a very simple, to explain email that went out to smaller customers, larger customers. We contacted the very largest ones we might visit.
Yep.
And then we explained the story to the customers or to our team. Here's what's going on and why, so they understood. Some were sad because some liked the initial Cargo Chief, and some were excited about the new Cargo Chief. Of course, the engineers are very excited about the new Cargo
because
Chief.
they finally got a chance to really invest in the product.
Well, they became more of the center of gravity. I think that's a good term. So it became more important and more key. And then we had to work through all the changes legally, selling off the brokerage division. There's complexities there that we had to work through. Part of it really was just all about communicating. Keeping organized is very important when you're going through such a transition, as well as keeping a model of why we're doing this. What's the purpose? What's the end game? What's the focus? What are you solving for? Yep. I think many people take steps and they do things and they don't really know why they're doing things. I think everyone needs to have a North Star. Where are you guiding? What are you solving for? And that's what we had. And it worked out. We had the blessing of our, the shareholders, the lead investors, our key vendors. Everyone was on board with this transition. A part of that was because of our ability to communicate the vision of where we're going.
And this could have come off the rails. It's all easy in hindsight to say that it went great, right? But it really could have imploded.
Oh yeah, no, it took serious drive, intense drive. Many of the audience here is entrepreneurs, and they understand the intensity, the 70 to 90 hour a week intensity, and just unyielding to anything. Just see an obstacle, break through it, or go around it. Do not stop. Do not fail.
Was it toughest to keep the customers in the boat, the employees in the boat, or the investors in the boat as you made that pivot in business model?
Well, our initial business was our customers were primarily shippers, basically, and manufacturers or growers who wanted to ship a truckload of something. Our new customers are freight brokers primarily. We do have some interest from shippers. And so we really came up with a whole new set of customers.
Yep.
I had to keep the team, key members of the team involved, and we wanted to keep the key stakeholders from an equity table point of view engaged and involved. And we handled all of that by working with them, hearing them out, making time to hear their concerns, and addressing the concerns to the point where they said they were satisfied.
Got it. Tell me a little about how the recruiting strategy has evolved as you've gone from a bunch of sales folks to a bunch of engineers, right? Totally different DNA, totally different places that you need to find them. And frankly, while good sales reps are hard to find, good engineers are even harder to find these days. How did you kind of think about changing the recruiting strategy?
So I find recruiting salespeople is so hard. When I'm interviewing a salesperson, this person sounds like they walk on water. They sound incredible. They're phenomenal salespeople. And most of the time, statistically, they don't work out, at most organizations. So sure. That's a tricky one. I don't know the answers to that. You hopefully have had previous speakers who know more than that. But then with an engineer, one of the things that we started to do was, as we knew that a higher percentage of employees were going to become engineers, we became very diligent about our advanced testing. And we run the engineers through multiple tests. And only after they had passed these tests would we then even consider hiring them. So we've become very
do you do that
tricky.
Before or after interviews?
We'll do an initial interview for half an hour. Do we like this person? Does it seem like a high level match?
Right.
And then we're going to say, we like you, but to save you time and save our team time, we're going to ask you to go through some of these tests. These tests are really hard. Maybe 1 in 5, 1 in 4 will pass the test. The rest fail the test.
Without going to specifics, what kind of test is it? What do you kind of
These
ask?
might be, so we'd be like, one test for a high level person would be, say, here is some data. Here is what I want the system to do. You have 4 hours from now to produce a system that will enable me to type in a city and tell me the weather. Something like that. And they have to figure out everything, and they have to be resourceful and experienced to do that. Another test might be for a back-end engineer, a deep dive on your Java capabilities. Or if it's a front-end engineer, a deep dive on Angular. If it's a full-stack engineer, a deep dive on both.
Got it.
I also think it's important. Salespeople tend to be independent, so having them interview each other matters some. In the engineering world, it's very much a team. So it's really important that if we're hiring an engineer, he's going to be working with other engineers. Those other engineers get to interview him or her and have a say in that person's hiring.
Got it.
We found that's important because you have to have a smooth flow at development.
So it all sounds good. Now let's talk about the stuff that hasn't gone as smooth as you might like. As you look back, I'm sure you've had some mishires along the way, over the years. What do you look back? You don't need to name names or anything, but what do you look back and say you missed? What were the common themes of what you might have done differently if you could go back and do it again?
I think one of the things is in my career, and I've started 4 companies, so I can use your question to think back to my other companies.
Yeah, sure.
Is that sometimes you look at someone and they have a great pedigree. You go, I just want that person. He's going to look great on paper. My investors are going to love him.
They went to Google, Harvard, whatever it may be, right?
Right. And it's nice that they went to a great school. It's a lot more interesting what they do afterwards. And what can they do? What's been their path? And give them problem-solving type interviews. It could be, if it's an engineer, it's an engineering situation. If it's a business person, here's a business school case. I'll come back to you in an hour. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this case.
And what are you looking for specifically? So you're not just looking for intelligence. You must be looking for something else.
Well, if it's a business person, you want someone who, when they make a recommendation, they think about how their recommendation will affect the entire organization, not just a little scope. So we're not solving for increasing sales. I'm solving for growing my company. I'm not solving for improving AR collections. I'm solving for having better cash flow. So what's the thinking? Does this person, especially an emerging company, does this person have the thinking to really understand how their actions can affect the entire organization?
Got it. And have you found that most people do well in that kind of exercise or not?
I think it depends on how mature they are. I think if they're fresh out of school, they haven't had that experience.
Right.
They haven't had that managerial experience, so they tend not to do that well. I think once someone's had some experience of a manager, as someone who's been in the C-level meetings and the director level meetings, depending on the size of the organization, they start to be able to handle those kind of questions and understand the ramifications of one department's actions as it ripples throughout the entire organization.
Got it. Fascinating. Well, I give you a ton of credit. Look, it's hard enough to scale a business and hard enough to get customers and raise money, but to completely transform the business model and the talent strategy seems immensely difficult. I'm in awe of how you've done it. What did you do when it came to redefining the DNA of the company? It would seem like going from a logistics and transportation company to a software company, the DNA and the fabric of the culture probably changed dramatically. How did you rewrite those rules? Did you do it? And if so, who did you involve? Who didn't you involve? And was it controversial?
So we looked at who were the right people to have going forward. What were the needs and the skills? And there weren't that many from the initial version that had a lot of people. So we took some expertise. So we cherry picked, here's a really good guy from an expertise point of view to retain and explain the new mission. And also, if you will, and once you start off in this new direction, it's a little bit like we're restarting things here, right? Yeah. And so there's an opportunity with a clean slate to say, these are the new rules. What do you think? And what I find has worked well for me is that when you engage the early team into, hey, what do you think about this policy? What do you think about that? They become to feel like it's not Russ's or the CEO's policy. It's our policy, and we're a family, and we're sharing this together. And then they're bought in, and they feel pride of ownership, and they work hard. They're more engaged. Everybody wins with that.
And if they're not, I suppose they have to go, right? Because they're either on the train or under the train.
Yeah. It's either working or it's not. And in small company, fit's really important, right? It's a small office, and if someone's not fitting, you've got to take care of that immediately.
Got it.
You can't blow that off.
Got it. Well, again, congratulations, Russ. It's a terrific story. How can people learn more about Cargo Chief or get in touch with you?
Thank you. So we have a website that tells a lot at cargochief.com, cargochief.com, and our contact details are there. We welcome to hear thoughts from various folks in the audience that if they're consuming truckload capacity, I'd love to hear from them and see if we can't help them do so more effectively and more efficiently.
Russ, thank you so much for making the time.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for your opportunity. Bye-bye.